The morning light filtered through the massive viewing windows of New Geneva Station, casting long shadows across the university corridor. Professor Marcus Webb walked with purpose, his scaled green skin catching the artificial sunlight as he made his way to classroom 247. His reptilian eyes scanned the schedule on his tablet. A small smile crossed his thin lips. Today would be perfect for what he had planned. Marcus had been teaching advanced calculus at the Galactic University for 12 years. In all that time, he had never met a human who could truly grasp the elegant beauty of higher mathematics. They were decent enough at basic arithmetic, he supposed, but when it came to the complex theoretical work that separated the truly intelligent species from the rest, humans always fell short. The Xanthari were natural mathematicians, worked like living computers, processing complex equations with ease. The crystalline beings could visualize mathematical concepts in ways that other species could barely imagine. Even the gas-dwelling ethereals had contributed important theorems to galactic mathematical knowledge. But humans, they were useful for manual labor and simple tasks. Nothing more. Marcus entered his classroom and set his materials on the curved desk at the front. The room was designed to accommodate various species, with adjustable seating and multiple display systems. About 30 students were already seated, representing 7 different species from across the galaxy. Most were Xanthari like himself, with a few crystalline students whose translucent blue bodies sparkled in the light. There were 2 ethereals floating in their containment suits, and scattered throughout were the usual collection of other species. And there, in the back corner, sat a human. The human looked to be in his mid-30s, with dark hair and an unremarkable face. He wore simple clothes, a plain shirt and pants that marked him as probably lower class even by human standards. Marcus had noticed him in class for the past few weeks, but the human never spoke. He never asked questions, and seemed to spend most of his time staring out the window or doodling in a notebook. Today, Marcus decided would be the day he made an example of this daydreaming human. "Good morning, class," Marcus began, his voice carrying easily through the room's acoustic system. "Today, we will be exploring multidimensional differential equations and their applications in hyperspace navigation theory." He activated the holographic display, and complex mathematical formulas began floating in the air above his desk. The equations twisted and turned, showing their relationships in 3-dimensional space. Most of the students leaned forward, their attention captured by the elegant mathematical dance. Marcus began his lecture, explaining how the equations could be used to calculate the curved paths that starships needed to follow when traveling through folded space. It was advanced material, the kind that challenged even his best Xanthari students. He noticed the human in the back corner still looking out the window, apparently more interested in the stars than in the mathematics that made traveling to them possible. Perfect. The key to understanding these equations, Marcus continued, is recognizing how the variables interact across multiple dimensions simultaneously. It requires a type of mathematical intuition that ... double quotes. He paused, pretending to just notice the human. "Excuse me, mister." The human looked up, seeming surprised to be called upon. "Rivers. Kyle Rivers." "Mr. Rivers, you seem distracted. Perhaps you would care to demonstrate your understanding of the material?" Several students turned to look at Kyle, and Marcus could see the familiar mixture of pity and curiosity in their faces. They had all seen this before, a professor calling on an unprepared student to make a point about paying attention in class. Kyle blinked slowly, then nodded. "Sure, Professor Webb. What would you like me to do?" Marcus smiled, showing his sharp teeth. This was going even better than he had hoped. The human was so confident in his ignorance that he was willing to volunteer for public embarrassment. "Would like you to solve this equation," Marcus said, gesturing to the holographic display. With a few quick movements, he modified the floating mathematics, creating a problem that involves 17 variables across 6 dimensions. It was the kind of problem that took even his advanced students hours to work through, and that was... With computer assistance, the classroom fell silent. Even the most confident students looked intimidated by the complexity of the equation hanging in the air. Marcus could see some of them already starting to work through possible approaches in their heads, faces showing the strain of the mental effort. Kyle stood up from his seat and walked slowly toward the front of the class. His movement was unhurried, casual, as if he were taking a stroll rather than approaching an academic execution. When he reached the holographic display, he stood quietly for a moment, his hands clasped behind his back, studying the floating numbers and symbols. "This is interesting," Kyle said finally, his voice carrying clearly through the silent room. "You are using the Zenthari method for dimensional mapping, but you have combined it with what looks like crystalline geometric proofs." Marcus felt a small flutter of surprise. He had not expected the human to recognize the different mathematical traditions in the problem. Still, identifying the components was very different from actually solving the equation. "Very observant," Marcus said, his tone making it clear that observation alone was not enough. "But can you solve it?" Kyle reached out and touched the holographic interface, causing the equation to shift and expand. His movements were confident, and Marcus noticed that he seemed to know instinctively how to manipulate the display system. Most students needed several classes to become comfortable with the three-dimensional interface. The problem with combining these methods, Kyle said, still working with the display, is that they approach dimensional relationships from opposite directions. The Zenthari method assumes dimensional independence, while the crystalline approach assumes dimensional harmony. As he spoke, Kyle began rearranging the equation, moving variables and transforming expressions with smooth, practiced motions. Marcus watched with growing amazement as the human's work began to make sense. Not only was Kyle solving the problem, but he was doing it in a way that Marcus had never seen before. "But if you approach it from a unified perspective," Kyle continued, his hands dancing through the holographic mathematics, "you can use the strengths of both methods while avoiding their weaknesses." The equation began to simplify under Kyle's touch, complex expressions folding into elegant solutions. Within 5 minutes, he had reduced the 17-variable, six-dimensional nightmare to a clean, simple answer that hung glowing in the air. The classroom was dead silent. Marcus stared at the solution, checking and rechecking the work in his mind. It was not just correct, it was brilliant. Kyle had found a solution path that was more elegant and efficient than anything Marcus had ever seen. The method he had used was completely original, combining mathematical traditions in a way that no Zenthari mathematician had ever attempted. Kyle said, stepping back from the display and looking at Marcus with calm eyes. "I think that works." Marcus opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Around the classroom, students were whispering in amazement, their voices creating a low buzz of excitement and confusion. Some of them were frantically taking notes, trying to understand the solution method they had just witnessed. Kyle walked back to his seat as casually as he had approached, leaving Marcus standing alone at the front of the classroom. Staring at mathematics that challenged everything he thought he knew about human intelligence, Marcus Webb stood frozen at the front of his classroom, staring at the elegant solution that hung in the holographic display. His mind raced as he tried to process what had just happened. A human had solved in minutes what should have taken hours, and he had done it using a method that Marcus had never seen before. The whispers from his students grew louder. He could hear fragments of conversation in different languages as various species tried to make sense of what they had witnessed. Some of the Zenthari students were checking Kyle's work step by step, their scaled faces showing confusion and amazement. The crystalline beings were pulsing with colors that indicated deep thought and surprise. "That cannot be correct," Marcus said finally, his voice strained. He moved to the display and began examining Kyle's solution more closely. But as he traced through each step, he found no errors. Every transformation was mathematically sound. Every simplification was valid. The human had not just guessed or gotten lucky. He had demonstrated a deep understanding of mathematical principles that went far beyond what Marcus had thought possible for his species. Kyle sat quietly in his chair, apparently unbothered by the attention. He had returned to looking out the window, watching the ships that moved between the space station and the nearby planets. His notebook was open on his desk, and Marcus could see that it was filled with symbols and diagrams, though from this distance he could not make out the details. "Mr. Rivers," Marcus called out, his voice sharper than he intended. "Please explain your solution method." Kyle looked up from the window, his expression calm and patient. Which part would you like me to explain, Professor? All of it, Marcus said. Your approach is ... unconventional. Kyle nodded and stood up again. He walked back to the front of the classroom. Marcus noticed that several students shifted in their seats to get a better view. The human's casual confidence was unsettling. Most students, even the brightest ones, showed some nervousness when asked to explain their work in front of the class. Kyle seemed as relaxed as if he were discussing the weather. The traditional approaches treat each dimension as a separate problem, Kyle began, gesturing to the holographic display. The Zenthari method works through them one at a time, which is very precise, but can take a long time. The crystalline method tries to see all the dimensions at once, which is faster, but can miss important details. As he spoke, Kyle manipulated the display to show how the different mathematical traditions approached the problem. Marcus watched in growing amazement as Kyle demonstrated a thorough understanding of not just the mathematics, but the cultural and philosophical differences behind each approach. But human mathematics, Kyle continued, developed differently. We learned to look for patterns and connections. Instead of seeing 17 separate variables, I saw 3 groups of related variables. Instead of treating 6 dimensions as individual spaces, I recognized that they formed 2 connected systems. Kyle's hands moved through the holographic interface, showing how he had grouped and reorganized the original equation. What had appeared impossibly complex began to look almost simple under his explanation. Once you see the underlying structure, Kyle said, the solution becomes much more obvious. Marcus felt his throat tighten. The human was not just solving advanced mathematics. He was teaching it, and doing so with a clarity that Marcus rarely achieved with much simpler material. Several of his best students were nodding in understanding, their faces showing the excitement that came with grasping a new concept. Where did you learn this method? Marcus asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Kyle shrugged. I developed it myself. Human mathematical education encourages creative thinking. We are taught to look for new ways to solve problems, not just to memorize existing techniques. Impossible, Marcus said quickly. Mathematics is not about creativity. It is about precision and logic. There are established methods for solving problems because they work. For the first time since Kyle had stood up, his expression changed. A small smile crossed his face, not mocking or superior, but almost sad. With respect, Professor Webb, I think that is where we disagree. Mathematics is one of the most creative fields in the universe. Every great mathematical breakthrough came from someone who saw a familiar problem in a new way. Kyle turned back to the holographic display and made a few quick adjustments. The original complex equation reappeared, but now Kyle began showing alternative solution paths. Within minutes, he had demonstrated 3 completely different approaches to the same problem, each one elegant and efficient. There are always multiple ways to reach the truth, Kyle said. The beautiful thing about mathematics is that it gives us the freedom to find our own path, as long as we follow the rules of logic. The classroom had gone completely silent again. Even Marcus found himself drawn into Kyle's explanation, fascinated despite his growing discomfort. The human's approach to mathematics was unlike anything he had encountered in his years of teaching. Mr. Rivers, Marcus said, his voice now barely controlled. Are you claiming that human mathematical methods are superior to those developed by species with centuries more experience? Kyle looked at him with those calm, patient eyes. Professor, I am saying that different approaches have different strengths. Zenthari mathematics is incredibly precise and reliable. Crystalline mathematics can handle complexity that would overwhelm most minds. Human mathematics brings pattern recognition and creative problem solving. He paused and looked around the classroom, making brief eye contact with students of various species. The best mathematics combines the strengths of all approaches. When we work together, we can solve problems that none of us could handle alone. Yes. Felt a surge of anger at the human's presumption. You speak of working together as if you were an equal contributor to galactic mathematical knowledge. Humans have made no significant contributions to advanced mathematical theory. Kyle's expression did not change, but Marcus thought he saw something flicker in the human's eyes. Kyle reached into his notebook and pulled out a small data pad, touched a few controls, and information began flowing across its screen. "Professor Webb," Kyle said quietly, "ask if you are familiar with the quantum field convergence theory that was published in the Galactic Mathematics Journal last year?" Marcus nodded stiffly. It had been one of the most important mathematical papers in recent years, solving several problems that had puzzled mathematicians across the galaxy for decades. Of course, it was brilliant work, though the author published under an anonymous pseudonym. Kyle handed him the datapad. The pseudonym was necessary because the author wanted the work to be judged on its merit, not on assumptions about the author's species. Marcus looked at the screen and felt his world shift. The datapad showed publication records, peer review communications, and copyright information. All of it pointed to one conclusion that Marcus's mind refused to accept. The anonymous author of the quantum field convergence theory was Kyle Rivers. The human standing in front of his classroom was not just a student who had gotten lucky with one problem. He was one of the most important mathematical minds in the galaxy. And Marcus had tried to humiliate him based on nothing more than species prejudice. Marcus looked up from the datapad to find Kyle watching him with those same calm, patient eyes. There was no anger there, no desire for revenge or humiliation, just a quiet sadness that seemed to encompass far more than this single moment of revelation. "It's mathematics," Kyle said softly. "Should bring us together, not drive us apart." Marcus Webb sat alone in his office 3 hours after his class had ended, staring at the datapad that Kyle Rivers had left with him. The small device contained enough evidence to shatter every assumption he had held about human intelligence for the past 12 years. Publication records, mathematical proofs, correspondence with the galaxy's most respected academics. All of it signed by the same quiet human, who had been sitting in the back of his classroom for weeks. The quantum field convergence theory was just the beginning. As Marcus dug deeper into the data, he found paper after paper published under various pseudonyms, all traced back to Kyle Rivers. The human had contributed solutions to problems that had stumped Zen theory mathematicians for generations. He had provided new approaches to theorems that crystalline beings had declared unsolvable. His work appeared in journals across the galaxy, always published anonymously or under false names. Marcus pulled up the Galactic Academic Database on his main computer and began searching for Kyle Rivers directly. What he found made his hands shake as he read through the results. Kyle Rivers held 7 doctoral degrees from Earth's most prestigious institutions. His dissertation on multidimensional mathematical modeling had been cited over 3,000 times by researchers across 47 different species. He had been invited to speak at mathematical conferences on 12 different worlds. Well, he had declined most of the invitations. But the most shocking discovery came when Marcus accessed the Cultural Exchange Program records. Kyle was not. At the university as a student, he was part of a human diplomatic mission, attending classes as an observer to study how different species approached mathematical education. The program description noted that he was considered one of Earth's foremost experts in theoretical mathematics and had volunteered for the exchange to promote better understanding between human and alien academic communities. Marcus leaned back in his chair, feeling dizzy. He had tried to embarrass a human who was more accomplished than most of his colleagues. Kyle had been sitting quietly in his classroom, not because he was struggling to understand the material, but because he was studying Marcus's teaching methods as part of his diplomatic mission. A soft chime indicated that someone was requesting entry to his office. Marcus looked up to see Kyle Rivers standing in the doorway, looking as calm and patient as always. "May I come in, Professor Webb?" Kyle asked. Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. Kyle entered and sat in the chair across from Marcus's desk. Moving with the same unhurried grace he had shown in the classroom, "I wanted to apologize," Kyle said. "I should have handled the situation in class differently. Did not mean to make you uncomfortable in front of your students." Marcus stared at him in disbelief. "You are apologizing?" "I am the one who tried to humiliate you. I called you out in front of the entire class because I assumed you were not paying attention." Kyle smiled, and for the first time Marcus saw genuine warmth in the expression. "You are protecting your classroom environment. A teacher needs to maintain order and engagement. I understand that, But you knew I was trying to embarrass you, Marcus said. You knew I had chosen a problem that was designed to be too difficult for you to solve. Yes, Kyle admitted, but I also knew that solving it might open up an interesting conversation about different approaches to mathematics. I hoped it might help your students see that there are many ways to think about complex problems. Marcus felt a wave of shame wash over him. Even while being publicly challenged and insulted, Kyle had been thinking about the educational value of the moment. He had turned what should have been his humiliation into a teaching opportunity for the other students. Why did you not tell me who you were? Marcus asked. Why did you let me treat you like an ignorant student? Kyle was quiet for a moment, looking out the window at the stars beyond the space station. Because I wanted to understand how you really think about humans and human intelligence. If you had known my credentials from the beginning, you would have treated me differently, but not because your opinions had changed. You would have seen me as an exception, not as an example of what humans can achieve. The truth of Kyle's words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He was right. If Marcus had known Kyle's background, he would have been respectful and polite, but he would have continued to believe that most humans were intellectually inferior. Kyle had allowed himself to be disrespected in order to reveal the depth of Marcus's prejudice. I have been teaching here for 12 years, Marcus said slowly. How many other humans have I dismissed? How many brilliant minds have I overlooked because of my assumptions? Kyle leaned forward slightly. That is the question. You need to answer, Professor Webb, but the more important question is what you plan to do with that knowledge now. Marcus looked down at the datapad again, scrolling through the impressive list of Kyle's achievements. I need to understand something. If you are one of Earth's most respected mathematicians, why are you here? Why are you pretending to be a student in my basic calculus class? It is not basic calculus, Kyle said with a smile. Your course covers advanced topics that most undergraduate students never encounter. You are an excellent teacher, Professor Webb. Your methods are clear and logical. And your students obviously respect you. Marcus felt another stab of shame. Kyle was complimenting his teaching even after being treated poorly. But why are you really here? Kyle stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the bustling traffic of ships and shuttles moving around the space station. Humans are still new to galactic society. We have been part of the galactic community for less than 50 years. Many species still see us as primitive newcomers who have little to contribute to advanced fields like mathematics and theoretical physics. And you want to change that perception, Marcus said. Want to build bridges, Kyle corrected. Human mathematics developed in isolation from galactic traditions. We approach problems differently because we learn to solve them without outside influence. Sometimes our methods are better, sometimes they are worse, but they are always different. That difference has value. Kyle turned back to Marcus. I attend classes like yours to learn how other species think about mathematics. I study your teaching methods and your problem-solving approaches, but I also hope to show that humans can contribute to galactic mathematical knowledge. Marcus thought about the elegant solution Kyle had demonstrated in class, the way he had combined different mathematical traditions into something new and beautiful. Your solution method today, was that an example of human mathematical thinking? Partly, Kyle said.
Us?
But it was also influenced by what I have learned from studying Xanthari and crystalline approaches. The best solutions often come from combining different perspectives. Marcus stood up from his desk and walked to join Kyle at the window. They stood side by side, watching the ships move through space in carefully calculated patterns. I owe you an apology, Marcus said. I owe the same apology to every human student I have ever taught. My prejudice has made me a worse teacher and a worse mathematician. No nodded slowly. Prejudice is a barrier to learning, Professor Webb. When we assume we know what someone is capable of, we stop looking for their real strengths. Marcus turned to face Kyle directly. Will you help me? You help me learn to teach better? Kyle smiled, and Marcus saw in that expression the same patience and kindness that the human had shown throughout their entire interaction. I would be honored to work with you, Professor Webb. Mathematics is too beautiful to be limited by the boundaries we create in our minds. As they stood together looking out at the stars, Marcus realized that his education was just beginning. News of what had happened in Professor Webb's classroom spread through New Geneva Station faster than Marcus had expected. By the next morning, he found 3 messages waiting in his communication system. 2 were from colleagues asking about the human who had solved the impossible equation. The 3rd was from Dr. Vex Thornhill. Marcus felt his stomach drop as he read it. Dr. Thornhill was a crystalline being who taught advanced theoretical physics at the university. His species could process mathematical information at incredible speeds, and Thornhill had never been modest about his intellectual abilities. He had also never hidden his belief that biological species were inherently inferior to his crystalline race when it came to complex thinking. The message was brief and direct. Thornhill wanted to meet with Kyle Rivers to verify his mathematical abilities. He suggested a series of challenges that would test whether Kyle's performance had been genuine, or just lucky guessing. Marcus knew Thornhill well enough to understand that this was not a friendly academic inquiry. The crystalline professor intended to expose what he believed was human fraud. Marcus immediately sent a message to Kyle, warning him about Thornhill's challenge. Kyle's response came back within an hour, and it surprised Marcus with its calm acceptance. Kyle agreed to meet with Thornhill and any other faculty members who wanted to test his abilities. He suggested they hold the challenges in the main lecture hall so that students could observe and learn from the different mathematical approaches. 3 days later, the university's largest auditorium was packed with students and faculty from across the station. Word had spread through the academic community about the upcoming mathematical competition, and beings from dozens of species had come to witness what many expected to be the humiliation of human arrogance. Marcus sat in the front row, feeling nervous despite Kyle's confident demeanor. He had spent the past 3 days working with Kyle on collaborative teaching methods, and he had come to respect the human's mathematical insights even more deeply. But Thornhill was formidable, and he would not be content with simple problem solving. He would push Kyle to the absolute limits of mathematical knowledge. Thornhill entered the auditorium with characteristic dramatic flair. His crystalline body caught the light from every angle, creating rainbow patterns that danced across the walls. He was followed by 3 other faculty members: Dr. Nina Vasquez, a human physicist from Earth who had requested to observe, Dr. Zeph Corlin, a Xanthari specialist in quantum mathematics, and Professor Elta Ming, an ethereal whose expertise in multidimensional theory was legendary throughout the galaxy. Kyle walked onto the stage wearing the same simple clothes he had worn to class, looking completely relaxed, despite the crowd of hundreds watching his every move. Marcus noticed that several human students had managed to get seats near the front, their faces showing a mixture of pride and anxiety as they watched their species representative prepare for academic battle. "Mr. Rivers," Thornhill began, his voice resonating with harmonic overtones that only crystalline beings could produce. "We are here to verify the mathematical abilities you demonstrated in Professor Webb's classroom. I have prepared a series of challenges that will test your knowledge across multiple fields of advanced mathematics." Kyle nodded politely. "I appreciate the opportunity, Dr. Thornhill. I hope this will be educational for everyone watching." Thornhill activated the auditorium's main holographic display, and the first challenge appeared in the air above the stage. It was a problem in abstract algebra that involved manipulating mathematical structures in 11 dimensions. The symbols and equations twisted through space in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Please solve this," Thornhill said with obvious confidence. "You have 30 minutes?" Kyle studied the holographic display for several minutes without moving. Marcus could see members of the audience whispering to each other, and he heard someone comment that the human appeared to be confused by the complexity of the problem. Then Kyle stepped forward and began to work. What followed was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. Kyle's approach to the abstract algebra problem was completely different from the traditional crystalline method. Instead of working through the dimensional transformations sequentially, he found patterns and symmetries that allowed him to solve multiple parts of the problem simultaneously. Within 15 minutes, Kyle had reduced the 11-dimensional monster to an elegant solution that hung glowing in the holographic display. The auditorium erupted in surprised murmurs as mathematicians in the audience verified his work. Thornhill's crystalline structure flickered with colors that indicated frustration and disbelief. "Interesting," Let us try something more challenging. Second problem was even more complex, involving quantum field theory and mathematical physics that pushed the boundaries of current galactic knowledge. This time, Kyle took even less time to solve it, using an approach that combined human intuitive leaps with rigorous mathematical proof. By the fourth challenge, Thornhill's confident demeanor had disappeared entirely. Kyle had not just solved every problem he had found solution methods that were more elegant and efficient than the traditional approaches. More importantly, he had explained each solution in terms that students in the audience could follow, turning what should have been an academic duel into an impromptu masterclass in advanced mathematics. Dr. Vasquez, the human physicist, leaned forward in her seat. Mr. Rivers, may I ask where you developed these solution techniques? Some of your approaches are completely original. Kyle paused in his work on the fifth challenge. They come from human mathematical education, Dr. Vasquez. We are taught to question assumptions and look for creative solutions. But they also come from studying the work of other species. The best mathematics happens when different approaches work together, as if to demonstrate his point. Kyle's solution to the fifth problem incorporated elements of Xanthari computational theory, its crystalline geometric visualization, and ethereal multi-dimensional analysis. The result was a mathematical proof that it was more beautiful and comprehensive than any single species could have created alone. Professor Ming, the ethereal, floated closer to the stage. Remarkable. I've synthesized mathematical traditions that most academics consider incompatible. How did you learn to think in such integrated ways? By studying with teachers like all of you, Kyle replied. Every species has mathematical insights that others can learn from. Humans just happen to develop the habit of borrowing and combining ideas from different sources. Thornhill, who had been growing quieter with each successful solution, finally spoke up. Mr. Rivers, I concede that your mathematical abilities are genuine. But I must ask, are you representative of human mathematical capability, or are you an exceptional individual? Kyle smiled and looked out at the audience, making eye contact with the human students in the front rows. Dr. Thornhill, that is? Exactly the wrong question to ask. Every individual has unique capabilities regardless of their species. The question we should be asking is how we can help each person develop their mathematical potential to its fullest. He gestured toward the complex equations still floating in the holographic display. These problems have solutions because beings from different species work together to develop the mathematical tools needed to solve them. Xanthari logic, crystalline visualization, ethereal dimensional theory, human pattern recognition, they all contribute to our understanding of the universe. Kyle walked to the center of the stage and looked directly at Thornhill. The real challenge is not whether any one species is superior to another. The challenge is learning to work together so that all of our mathematical traditions can contribute to the advancement of knowledge. The auditorium fell silent as Kyle's words sank in. Marcus looked around and saw faces from dozens of species, all focused on the human, who had just redefined what mathematical collaboration could look like. Thornhill's crystalline body pulsed with colors that Marcus had never seen before. After a long moment, the crystalline professor spoke in a voice that had lost all of its earlier arrogance. Mr. Rivers, Thornhill said, I believe I have much to learn from you. Kyle nodded respectfully. And I have much to learn from you, Doctor. Thornhill. That is what makes mathematics so exciting. There is always more to discover when we work together. The auditorium erupted in applause that seemed to go on forever. The weeks following Kyle's public demonstration brought changes to New Geneva Station that nobody had expected. Word of the human mathematician's abilities spread beyond the university, reaching academic institutions across the galaxy. Messages began arriving from research centers on distant worlds, all asking the same questions. Were there more humans like Kyle Rivers? Had Earth been hiding its mathematical talent? What other capabilities might humanity possess that the galaxy had overlooked? Marcus Webb found himself at the center of these inquiries, fielding calls from colleagues he had not spoken to in years. The irony was not lost on him that he, who had tried to embarrass Kyle, was now being asked to explain human mathematical abilities to the galactic academic community. But the most significant change was happening much closer to home. The Galactic Mathematical Consortium had sent a delegation to the station, led by Director Chen Watanabe, a human who served as one of the organization's senior administrators. Marcus had been surprised to learn that humans already held important positions in galactic mathematical institutions.
Ow.
Though they rarely advertised their species affiliation, Kyle was in Marcus's office when Director Watanabe arrived for their scheduled meeting. She greeted Kyle with the familiarity of old colleagues, which made Marcus realize that Kyle's reputation extended far beyond what he had discovered in the academic databases. "Kyle," Director Watanabe said, as she settled into a chair, "you have certainly stirred up the academic community. My office has been receiving inquiries about human mathematical capabilities from every major research institution in the galaxy." Kyle looked slightly uncomfortable with the attention. "That was not my intention, Director. I was simply trying to participate in the cultural exchange program." Director Watanabe smiled. "I know, but your demonstration has forced us to address something we have been avoiding for too long. The galaxy needs to understand that human mathematical contributions are not anomalies. They are examples of what our species can offer when given the opportunity." She turned to Marcus. "Professor Webb, your report about Kyle's abilities has been very helpful. But I need to ask you some difficult questions about human students at this university." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. He had been dreading this conversation, knowing that his years of prejudice against human students would be exposed. "I understand, Director. Please ask whatever you need to know." "How many human students have you taught over the past 12 years?" Director Watanabe asked. 47, Marcus answered immediately. He had looked up the exact number after his conversation with Kyle, part of his effort to understand the scope of his mistakes. "And how many of those students received high marks in your courses?" Marcus hesitated. 3. Director Watanabe nodded as if she had expected this answer. "And how many of those students asked questions that you could not answer, or suggested solution methods that you had not considered?" The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. As he thought back through the years, he remembered dozens of instances where human students had offered ideas that he had dismissed without consideration. He recalled humans who had asked questions that seemed simple, but actually touched on deep mathematical concepts. He remembered students who had struggled with his teaching methods, but had shown flashes of insight that he had ignored. "Many of them," Marcus admitted quietly. "I think I missed many opportunities to learn from my students." Kyle leaned forward in his chair. "Professor Webb, you are not alone in this. The entire galactic academic system has been built around the assumption that certain species are naturally better at mathematics than others. It has created barriers that prevent collaboration and limit everyone's potential." Director Watanabe pulled out a datapad and activated its display. Numbers and charts appeared in the air above Marcus's desk, showing statistical analyses that made his heart sink. "These are performance records for human students across all mathematical disciplines at galactic universities," she explained. "When humans are taught by instructors who expect them to succeed, their performance is comparable to any other species. When they are taught by instructors who expect them to fail, they perform poorly." She highlighted a particular section of the data. "The most telling statistic is this one. Human students who transfer from universities with low expectations to institutions with high expectations show immediate and dramatic improvement in their mathematical performance. The difference is not in the students' abilities. The difference is in how they are taught and what is expected of them." Marcus stared at the data, feeling the full weight of his failures as an educator. How many brilliant minds have I discouraged? How many students gave up on mathematics because I convinced them they were not capable? "That is the past, Professor Webb," Kyle said gently. "The question is what we do now." Director Watanabe deactivated her display and looked directly at Marcus. "The consortium is proposing a new initiative. We want to establish collaborative research programs that bring together mathematicians from different species to work on problems that no single group could solve alone. Kyle's demonstration showed us what becomes possible when different mathematical traditions work together." She paused and glanced at Kyle before continuing. "We would like you to lead the program here at New Geneva Station, Professor Webb. Your Experience with Kyle has given you insights into cross-species mathematical collaboration that few other faculty members possess. Marcus was stunned. You want me to lead this program? After what I have done? Because of what you have learned? Director Watanabe corrected. Change is most effective when it comes from people who understand both the problems and the solutions. You have seen firsthand how prejudice limits mathematical progress. That makes you the ideal person to help others avoid the same mistakes. Kyle nodded in agreement. Professor Webb, you have the respect of your colleagues and the experience. To make this program work, most importantly, you understand what needs to change and why it matters. Marcus looked between Kyle and Director Watanabe, feeling overwhelmed by the responsibility they were offering him. What would this program involve? Mixed species research teams, Director Watanabe explained. Joint classes that teach different mathematical traditions side by side, exchange programs that allow students to learn from professors of other species, conference presentations that showcase collaborative solutions to complex problems. She smiled as she described her vision. Imagine mathematics courses where Xanthari precision works alongside human creativity, where crystalline visualization combines with ethereal dimensional theory. Imagine research projects where the unique strengths of each species contribute. Two breakthroughs that none could achieve alone. Director, there is something else we need to consider. This program cannot be just about mathematics. We can show that species collaboration works in academic settings. It could change how the galaxy approaches cooperation in other fields as well. Marcus felt a spark of excitement as he began to understand the full scope of what they were proposing. You were talking about more than just mathematical education? You were talking about changing how different species work together throughout galactic society. Exactly, Director Watanabe said. Mathematics is a universal language. We can prove that collaborative approaches produce better results in mathematical research. It becomes a model for collaboration in engineering, medicine, diplomacy, and every other field where different species work together. Kyle turned back from the window, his face showing the same calm confidence that Marcus had learned to recognize. Professor Webb. This is an opportunity to help build a galaxy where every species' unique capabilities are valued and utilized, where no one is dismissed because of assumptions about their limitations. Marcus thought about his 47 human students and the opportunities he had missed to learn from them. He thought about Kyle. He thought about all the brilliant minds across the galaxy who might be overlooked because they did not fit traditional expectations. I accept, Marcus said firmly. When do we begin? Director Watanabe smiled. We begin now, Professor Webb. The future of galactic mathematics starts with the next class you teach. As they discussed the details of the new program, Marcus felt something he had not experienced in years. Genuine excitement about the possibilities that lay ahead. For the first time, he was truly ready to learn from his students, regardless of what species they happened to be. 6 months after Kyle Rivers had first solved the impossible equation in Marcus's Webb's classroom, the main auditorium of New Geneva Station was once again packed with students and faculty, but this time the atmosphere was different. Instead of competitive tension, there was an energy of collaboration and discovery that Marcus had never experienced in his years of teaching. The occasion was the first presentation of results from the cross-species mathematical collaboration program. Teams of mixed-species researchers were sharing their findings with the academic community, demonstrating what could be achieved when different mathematical traditions worked together. Marcus stood at the side of the stage, watching as a team of human Xanthari and crystalline students presented their solution to a problem in quantum mechanics that had puzzled researchers for decades. The students moved seamlessly between different mathematical approaches, building on each other's insights to create a solution that was more elegant than anything any single species could have developed. Amazing, is it not? Kyle Rivers said, quietly appearing beside Marcus. Kyle had officially joined the university faculty as a professor of collaborative mathematics, a position created specifically for him by the Galactic Mathematical Consortium. It is beyond what I imagined possible, Marcus replied, watching as the student team fielded questions from faculty members of various species. 6 months ago, I believed that mathematics was about individual brilliance and species-specific, Capabilities. Now I see that the most beautiful mathematics emerges from minds working together. The student presentation concluded to enthusiastic applause, and Kyle walked onto the stage to introduce the next team. Marcus marveled at how naturally Kyle had taken to his role as a teacher and program coordinator. His ability to help students from different species understand each other's mathematical approaches had transformed the entire university's approach to education. The next presentation, Kyle announced to the audience, comes from a team that tackled one of the most challenging problems in modern mathematics. Please welcome Dr. Nina Vasquez, Dr. Zeph Corlin, Professor Alta Ming, and Dr. Vex Thornhill. Marcus felt a surge of pride as he watched the 4 faculty members take the stage. Thornhill, who had once challenged Kyle's abilities with such arrogance, had become one of the program's most enthusiastic supporters. The crystalline professor had discovered that his computational abilities were greatly enhanced when combined with human pattern recognition and ethereal dimensional intuition. The faculty team's presentation focused on their work developing a unified mathematical framework that could describe both quantum mechanics and gravitational fields. It was the kind of problem that had defeated individual researchers for centuries. But their collaborative approach had yielded breakthrough insights that promised to revolutionize theoretical physics. As Thornhill explained how human mathematical intuition had provided the key insight for their solution, Marcus remembered his own arrogance from just months before. The transformation in both himself and his colleagues had been profound, but it had required them to let go of deeply held beliefs about intellectual superiority and species-based limitations. After the faculty presentation, Kyle returned to the microphone. We have one final presentation today, and it represents the most significant achievement of our collaborative program. This team has been working on a problem that goes beyond mathematics into the realm of practical applications that could benefit the entire galaxy. Marcus felt his heart race as Kyle gestured toward him. Professor Marcus Webb will present the work of our advanced integration team. Walking onto the stage, Marcus felt the weight of hundreds of eyes watching him. But unlike the anxiety he had felt during Kyle's original demonstration, this nervousness came from excitement about sharing genuinely groundbreaking work. 6 months ago, Marcus began, his voice carrying clearly through the auditorium. I believed that effective mathematics required rigid adherence to established methods. I thought that mixing different approaches would lead to confusion and inferior results. He activated the holographic display, showing the complex mathematical structures that his team had developed. Our advanced integration team, composed of students and faculty from 8 different species, has proven me completely wrong. By combining mathematical traditions that were previously considered incompatible, we have developed new tools for solving problems that affect every world in the galaxy. The holographic display showed their primary achievement, a mathematical model that could predict and prevent the cascade failures that sometimes occurred in interstellar communication networks. These failures had caused massive disruptions to galactic commerce and communication. And previous attempts to solve the problem had failed because they relied on single-species mathematical approaches. The breakthrough came, Marcus continued, when we stopped trying to force our different methods to work the same way, and instead learned to use their differences as strengths. Human pattern recognition identified the subtle warning signs that precede network failures. Xanthari computational precision calculated the exact intervention points. Crystalline visualization helped us understand the complex relationships between net nodes. Ethereal dimensional theory showed us how failures propagate across spacetime. As Marcus explained their solution, he could see faces in the audience, lighting up with understanding. Faculty members who had initially been skeptical of cross-species collaboration were nodding in recognition of the elegance and power of the integrated approach. But the most important discovery, Marcus said, reaching the conclusion of his presentation, was not mathematical, it was educational. We learned that when different minds work together with mutual respect and open communication, they can achieve things that none of them could accomplish alone. He looked out at the diverse audience, seeing beings from dozens of species all united by their love of mathematical truth. This principle applies far beyond mathematics. in engineering, medicine, diplomacy, and every other field where intelligent beings work together. The combination of different perspectives and approaches leads to better solutions. Marcus paused and looked directly at Kyle, who was standing at the side of the stage with a proud smile on his face. I owe a debt of gratitude to Professor Rivers, who taught me that intelligence comes in many forms, and that the most beautiful discoveries happen when those forms work together. The auditorium erupted in applause that seemed to go on forever. As Marcus left the stage, he was surrounded by colleagues from multiple species, all eager to discuss the implications of his team's work and to explore new collaborative opportunities. Kyle approached through the crowd, extending his hand in the human gesture of congratulation. Excellent presentation, Professor Webb. Your team's work will save countless lives and prevent immeasurable economic damage throughout the galaxy. Marcus shook Kyle's hand warmly. This success belongs to all of us, Kyle. You showed us that mathematics is not about proving one approach is superior to another. It is about finding ways for all approaches to contribute to our understanding of the universe. As the crowd around them continued to buzz with excited conversations about future collaborative projects, Kyle smiled. Professor Webb, I think we have started something that will change mathematics forever. Marcus nodded, watching his students and faculty from different species formed impromptu discussion groups, sharing ideas and planning new research partnerships. Not just mathematics. Kyle, we have shown that the galaxy is stronger when every species' unique gifts are valued and utilized. Kyle looked around the auditorium at the scene of enthusiastic cross-species collaboration. Perhaps that was the most important equation we needed to solve all along. As they stood together watching the future of galactic mathematics take shape around them, Marcus reflected on how much had changed since that day when he had tried to embarrass a quiet human. In the back of his classroom, he had learned that true intelligence lay not in assuming superiority, but in recognizing the value of every mind willing to contribute to the endless search for truth. The universe, turned out, was much more beautiful when explored together.